the Bottom of It with your host, Josh Moriarty.
Welcome to the Bottom of It with me, your host, Josh Moriarty. How are you doing out there, people? I hope everyone is taking care of themselves. What are you listening to this on? You want to... Wait, isn't Apple's making new wireless headphones? I hate wires. So I'm happy about it. I think it's going to be a good thing. Maybe they're going to make a whole bunch of money off us for a long time. We all have to buy new accessories, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so Apple, there you go, you've got my approval. Today's episode is with Kimbra, the one and only, the inimitable Kimbra. She's an old friend of mine. I've known her for quite a long time. We met her in Melbourne when she moved there from New Zealand, however many years back that was now. So yeah, caught up with her recently in New York, where she's living, working on a whole bunch of new music, being inspired by that city and all that it has to offer. So we sat down and talked about life, music, philosophy, feeding the children of the songs that come to your brain, head, tube, all of that. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Kimbra, enjoy. It doesn't stop, right? Like, we just keep doing this thing. It's almost another song, another album, another tour, another show, and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you wait. I feel like it's kind of waiting for, you know, what was I waiting? We could wait for it to make you happy, or for something to achieve a certain thing. Like, once you get this thing, it'll all, and then it's like, well, this is just the same shit over and over and over. Yeah. So I have to figure out how to enjoy my life, or enjoy this process
without fighting for a means to an end.
Yeah, because it's just always going to be the same thing. This is pretty much all it is. Like, it can be a little lower, smaller gig, a little higher, bigger gig, bigger album, more fame, but essentially it's the same shit.
It is, that's true.
So what?
When I was in London a couple of years ago, I got to spend time with Roland Orzabal from Tears for Fears.
Right, which one's he, the singer?
Kurt Smith and Roland both sung, but Roland had the dark black hair and he had the slightly
He's the main singer, isn't
voice.
he?
Yeah, that's right. And it was amazing actually when we met, because we met in a hotel lobby and we both obviously sort of knew what each other looked like, but we had never met before. And the bathrooms were like, here's the men's bathrooms and here's the females one. And we both came out of the bathroom at the same time at the hotel lobby and opened the doors, and he was just like standing. Yeah, and I was like, Roland. And he's like, Kimbra. It's just such an amazing, hilarious moment. But
were you working with him or anything? Or?
We talked about it. I mean, I don't know. We were kind of put together for that kind of reason, but I find that all quite forced, that idea of like, you guys would be good together.
Who puts you together?
Well, I mean, people from the label are friends with him, and we did have mutual friends through, like, he knew Janelle Monáe and through like different people like that, and so it was kind of a conversation going around of us meeting. But I was just more interested in talking to him and seeing if we vibed as people, and then maybe if that felt natural, then that's cool. But
well, it's always felt to me kind of like this weird blind date when you do these sessions with people, and some of them you're not feeling it, and they're feeling it more than you, and then you've got to, like, it's not you, it's me, I'm sorry, I don't know if we can continue to work together.
That's right, it's very much like dating.
You've got to let them down.
And you've got to learn a language with someone to create with them, you know, so you're kind of, it's sort of a certain vocabulary to communicate your ideas, and that doesn't happen straight off the bat.
No, of course not. I think the meeting beforehand, before getting straight into the studio, is definitely...
I make it a rule, you know. Whenever I'm right with anyone, I'm like, let's have dinner before, or at least breakfast. And multiple times people would write back and say, I've never had that before.
Yeah,
and
really?
I find that really interesting. I'm like, but we're about to enter, like, I mean, I see it quite a sacred space to go into, to write with someone and to open, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe that's not the right way to look at it, and maybe that's why, you know, some people are more fluid at it than I am sometimes.
Yeah, but it depends. If you're trying to make music that's inspired, or that, you know, really means something to you, then it needs to be like what you're saying. Whereas if you're just trying to write pop tunes or just churn something out, then you've got an agenda already, and that's okay, because at least you both know what you're doing. But I can understand why you would be like that.
This doesn't excite me as much, But the cool thing with Roland is we had this really awesome conversation about his own journey. making the new Tears for Fears album. Which
There's a new
actually,
Tears for Fears
Yeah,
album?
well, Warner Brothers are going to be putting it out, so my A&R is actually working on their record as well. So I've heard a bit about the process, but talking to him directly was really fascinating because I sort of opened up to him and said, look, I am finding it hard at the moment. I was writing for the Golden Echo and I was like, I've kind of hit some walls and, you know, struggling to break through them, and like, what do you do when you encounter that stuff? And he told me about a time when he was writing songs from the big chair where they just ran off to the south of France.
Love you just having a chat with the
I
guy
know,
from
isn't it
Chesney. I remember we were
insane?
writing songs
Yeah.
for the big chair.
I know. And they ran off to the south of France and they just booked a house out there, and they literally every day would go and, you know, sample new wines from the region and eat
course they
cheese.
did.
And he brought a prophet with him and maybe one other like bass synth. And if any ideas came, only out of the necessity to express what he ever write. It had to come from that place where he needed to say something, or needed there was.
Okay.
And you know that feeling when you actually literally, you know, feel there's no other way to get something off your chest than to sit down and express it in a melody or a poetry of some sort. And so he waited for those moments, you know, and that was a kind of interesting little nugget where we talked about. But then what really like hit me later in the conversation was, he told me that even to this day, when he's making records with his label, he's still being put in rooms with people to write hits. Like, you'd think that at his stage in his career, it's kind of like, you guys make the record you want to make.
Yeah.
But to this day, he was still being put in the room with, like, people that I'd been put in the room with, like, you know, Norwegian hit makers and things like that were, and these sort of different collaborators he'd never met. And he was having the same issue with, well, you know, I'm trying to get a feel for it, and he enjoyed it. But it just reminded me of what you were saying, that it never changes. Even at that stage of your career, you're still in a space where you're having to ride the line between a commercial, you know, palatable product and also, you know, being a very successful band purely for the reason that you are unique and that you don't follow any of the trends and you do what you do. But another thing he said to me was that it never gets any easier or any, you know, smoother or kind of like, oh, now I'm on my, you know, 16th album and it's all easy. But he says you just get better at trusting the process.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that, even, you know, now making my third album or whatever, and I get those same feelings of anxiety about, like, I'm back in this room with this person I don't connect with. What if I'm writing material that's not from my soul? All of these things that we as artists go through. But I just have his voice still, Roland Audible, in my head being like, trust the process. Because then you can kind of live inside that space of, like, these things that come and go in your career, these voices, these A&Rs, these people, and you know that eventually you always get to the place you need to get to, because you always end up finishing the record.
You do
most of the time,
always
yeah.
get there. And yeah, I mean, we've
You know?
all done it.
And that's kind of, for me, a real place of solace to learn to trust.
You're getting better at dealing with all that stuff as it goes along.
Absolutely.
What's helped? Meditation, things like that? Just growing older, doing it more?
Yeah, I think like when you're younger, there's so much identity placed on the music you make, and like it's your way to prove to the world your kind of value, you know, especially if that's always what you've been good at or that's been your gift from the start. And I think with maturity, I learned to realize that I have like a wide range of things to offer to the world, and music is one of them, but I'm not so defined by myself as a musician now. And from going to places like Africa and seeing the world not as a musician and going just as a person, as a part of a team that's partnering with communities, helping women build businesses who have HIV, like that has been a life changer for me in terms of seeing my role in the world, not just as a person who can sing a song and, you know,
of course.
help and heal people that way, just to be a healer as a human being, like we were talking about before. So when I make records now, I'm excited by what they can make people feel and how they can make me feel when I'm making them, but I'm less removed from them being a perfect representation of who I am. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Of course.
Whereas back in the day, I think it had to be, this album has to express the whole of who I am. It has to tie into, I have to communicate all of the things that I think and feel and express. Whereas now I'm a little more patient and kinder to myself about, you know, we are multifaceted human beings, and our art can only ever be a small fragment of that at each time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's easy to be extremely obsessive, and if, yeah, I mean, I've been like that in periods as well. Like, you think you have to capture everything you need to say, and it represents your entire being as a person.
And if you've lived your whole life actually being that person, the musician, and being defined by being that as your main way of communicating with people, then that is fair enough, you know, that there would be so much riding on this one piece of art you create. But when you've been able to realize yourself in many different ways as a human being, so having different skills in the world and different ways of communicating with people, it just seems like one of the many, as opposed to the ultimate piece of work that you create. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to figure out at the moment. It's just, I feel like I've been defined by music as my profession and vocation for such a long time, and it's just become, I'm like, is this it? Is this all it's going to be? And you need to find other things that bring you joy in your life and give in other ways, other than just doing music, because it is very self-obsessive, and you got to look at photos of yourself. It's like
it encourages narcissism, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's healthy to find ways to get out of that the best you can.
Yeah, I think it was a main theme on my last album as well. The reason I called it The Golden Echo is the original title was Narcissism, the Golden Echo, which is where the Golden Echo is the flower.
Why'd you cut the narcissism?
Well, you can probably guess. No, I mean, in the end, I did want it to be a little easy to say. I found that people were struggling with the full title, and I made it very clear in the interviews kind of what the record was about in its entirety. But Narcissus turns into a yellow flower when he dies by the lake after looking at himself for so long, and the flower is evidently called the Golden Echo, and actually Narcissus Golden Echo is the name of that daffodil that you see with the yellow petals and the kind of white trumpet in the middle. But this idea of a golden echo to me has always been really beautiful, because it's the thing that calls you outward from yourself, or the sound that draws you to go beyond. And my greatest feelings or experiences in music has been when it's connected me to the whole, or actually taken me out of myself. And I know you can relate to this as well, probably, like moments on stage where you've become, you've escaped the paralysis of self-awareness, you know. It's really special when you kind can be connected
it's hard to get
the audience.
To
it's
that
very
place.
hard, very rare.
Michael Jackson was good at that.
Yeah. But of course, then the rest of his life was so paralyzed by inner self-awareness. So, you know, he probably found a freedom on stage to escape a lot of that. But I think my favorite moments as an artist or as a musician has been when I've been connected with that thing that calls me outward, and I call it the Golden Echo in the context of the last album. It was that thing that draws you to, and it comes from a quote as well that says, how to keep beauty from vanishing away, to give beauty back to beauty's self and beauty's giver. It's just this idea that we're also scared of losing our youth or our beauty, or the way that you retain that is to constantly give it back in a kind of
especially in this industry, I think, and I think especially more so for female artists as well. They kind of cop it the worst.
And that was so profound to me at the time, though, because I was like, wow, this isn't just about like this inward self-dialogue, but it's actually a conversation with the world and with the audience, and it helped me to really let go a lot. And seeing it all like this echo that keeps resounding.
I like it.
And it involves other people then, and it become a lot less about just you being defined by your art, but actually the art is defined by the conversation that continues after it's released and as it's going, and it's a lot more full circle. I can live with that. I can live more in that space. The narcissistic side of music making is, it's paralyzing. It is paralyzing. Takes away the joy of it as well.
Yeah, I think even with this new project that I'm starting, it's called War Is Over, but I don't want it to be, I don't really want my name so affiliated with it, or I don't really want my image to be the main part of it, because I just want to be able to have that, to be able to be removed from it, so that it can't start to, you look at someone like Justin Bieber, and it's, your name is, your life is your name and your whole thing, and you just get sucked into this entire thing. I guess that would be difficult for you sometimes, being Kimbra and being Kimbra.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line between which is you and which is the artist thing at the same time?
Yeah, of course. That's partly why try to create some kind of surrealism to the shows, to be able to get, at times I call it getting into a character, when, you get the hair prepped and the dresses and all of that. And yes, it is for, a theatrical kind of exploration and fun and all that, but I know deep down there's something psychological about that as well. That I am also finding a space to enter into where I can feel safer, and and then also take it all off at the end of the night, get in my tux and just be,
that's what David Bowie, was always doing, just creating a different character all of the time. But then someone like Prince, he's just the most confusing of all, though. I think he really was that.
Well, that's what's fascinating about it, is although that's an intentional thing to set up a character, you also know that it is a part of you. It's not a character removed from yourself.
Yes,
because I'm still also singing songs from the heart and always singing about something that I've experienced. So this is the thing that I've come to accept, is that human beings are so incredibly multifaceted. We don't have one authentic self, and this is the one authentic self you are. We have a multitude of parts that make up our authenticity. And I think Prince was so incredible at that, because he was able to explore all of those with a complete, unapologetic attitude, It's like, I am all of these things.
Yes.
And it is fully me. And he was never, ever defined by any one of those things, because he kept moving and kept you guessing and it's not that you didn't, he's confusing and he doesn't know who he is. I think he did know who he was, but he was very accepting of all the parts of who he was.
Well, so he just, I find it funny with him, there was no quality control he just put everything out. And then they're talking about the vault, though. It's like, he's got 40 albums.
Hi. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oberon.
Oh, that's Oberon?
That's Oberon.
She looks nice.
She's nice.
It doesn't matter. Prince, they got
quality control. No, well, that comes back to a lack of.
He just had no filter on himself, I don't think.
But you see, if you were so concerned with every piece of work defining you, then you would be extremely obsessive about quality control. But I think because he didn't let those works, he was defined by the constant output and prolific nature of his work. So it would let him be a little more, I guess, like you said, less precious about every piece of work.
But then still really precious about
it. True. No, he's not perfect, that's true.
Did you ever get to hang out with him at all?
Well, I had opportunities.
Gave you the Grammy, didn't he? That was pretty cool.
And that was...
Can't argue with that.
You know what I mean? In a way, it didn't need to be more than that for me, because that's
plenty.
That was a huge moment. There's something about eye contact in that kind of capacity, where someone actually acknowledges you for something you've been a part of, and you acknowledge them, and that eye contact says 1,000 words, as cheesy as it is, but that to me is far more meaningful than maybe an awkward interaction where I make a fool of myself and don't know what to say, But
he would be a hard one to not get a little bit weak at the knees for.
Doesn't he not look people in the eye a lot of the time as well, in elevators? And I'm even surprised I got the shades off for him to.
Thanks, Prince.
But the cool thing is he did let Janelle Monáe know that he'd listened to my album and that he had a favorite song off the album, which is...
Did you ever find out what it was?
Carolina.
Oh, I like that one. Did you write that with Mikey?
Yeah, that's right, So I think that, to me, that is extremely special, and it means that I don't have to engage in an awkward interaction. I can just know that and live with that he listened to the album, and that's huge. And also, just an amazing thing to think that he is that engaged with modern culture and always... Yeah,
of course.
And that he was drawn to a song that probably sounded least like anything on the album. I was very inspired by Prince with that record, but that's probably one that he's always into the thing that he does less of, or that he's most curious about,
So what's the new album sounding like? How far along are you?
Been writing a lot, I've been traveling a lot, so over on Ethiopia and Kenya, I've been writing over there, and parts of Europe, and collecting songs, and I think it's starting to show threads now, which is always the time to be cool, let's start making this. But I'm sure you would know as well, an album doesn't really reveal itself until the last week of making it, really. And that's
you got to keep going.
the point where you can kind of say, I think this is what it's going to sound like. But I don't like to put those sorts of stamps on it too early on, because you just want to let it have the freedom to...
How many songs roughly have you got at the moment?
Written?
Yeah, I mean vibes. It's kind of vibes, isn't it, at the start of an album process?
Yeah. Oh,
sketches, and
a
then
lot of sketches.
it starts to come together.
No,
You're a chronic sketcher though, eh?
There's a lot of sketches.
I've been talking to your brother about the second album. He's like, yeah, there's something like 100 songs that were...
Yeah, there's a lot. But I mean, it is what we do every day. So I mean, I have a studio at my house in my apartment.
I don't really
now,
do it. I'm too lazy to do it every day.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, every day is an overstatement. I guess what I mean is like tampering with things every day of some sort. And when
There's
you're doing
there's
that
something going
with a
in your
little
head every
beat,
day.
yeah, exactly. You're brewing, even
Yeah.
if it's in the subconscious, you're always working in some way, which again makes it so hard to live a life with routine and structure because you're always consumed somewhat by, the songs are like little children, like begging to be fed.
Yeah.
It feels like,
They are.
Do you feel like that sometimes?
Yeah, of course, yeah. They never leave me alone.
And if you neglect them for too long, it's an awful kind of sense of guilt. There it is.
Do you get the dream songs? I get dream songs. I've had a few of those recently. I'm getting more and more of them. But it's like this thing where you wake up and it's a bubble and you have to be as delicate as you possibly can to not pop the bubble.
Right.
So I wake up and it's floating the songs in my head. I can hear the melody, I can hear the chords, and then I have to grab my guitar, but I have to try and find the key of the song really, really gently, because if I play it too loud, I'll pop the bubble and the song will vanish.
The dream, yeah.
Yeah, so you
It's a
find it
thin
like,
veil.
and then you start to try and find the chords, and then if you play one wrong chord that's not the one that you were hearing, you can pop the bubble and
That's
you can
a
lose
real
it.
gift that you have that.
I mean, it's just some weird thing that happens to you,
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I've always had those ones. I'm getting better at deciphering which ones are worth waking up for and which ones are like, no, that sounds a bit shit. I'm going to close my eyes and go back to
And
sleep.
not worth it.
Yeah.
Have you looked into lucid dreaming much? And
I don't know anything about it. Hit me.
Well, no, I definitely have had some friends, artists, musician friends, that have spent a lot of time reading about the idea of actively returning back to your dreams with the intention to keep that space alive that you are in. And you can train your brain to, I think it involves letting yourself come out of the subconscious after dreaming for a bit, but then getting up. I'm trying to remember if you actually get up or not. I think you do get up and you do an activity and then you return to bed for another hour after that time. And if you practice this, you should read about it. And it's quite fascinating that people can return back to the dream space they were in and actually have a form of control within it and be able to kind of guide themselves through it. And, it's definitely... I have a few friends who've had some pretty profound experiences with it, and they've already been, attuned to, dreaming and full ideas coming to them, so they're already kind of...
I can never harness the full idea.
Because it's a practice, though. If you practice it, evidently you can tune into them.
I think it's hard with music as well, because you've got to hear a whole song in your head.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can only hear the start of it or something when I come out of the dream, so I can get the basis of it, but it's maybe not a whole song in your head as well.
Right.
You know how a dream feels like 4 hours, but they reckon it only goes for 12 seconds?
Really?
So you're probably only getting 12 seconds of a song, but you think you've got the album's worth.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing to think about.
That's what they say, but they say a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, dreams, I feel like, are unbound by time and space, really, aren't they? They're kind of, how do you even measure the length of it?
I quite like Inception. Was it Inception? When they tried to explain how that works. They did a pretty good job as far as a Hollywood movie goes. One of the things I've been interested in is what the philosophy is of why we make music. Like, what is it what drives us to do it, and also what does it offer people in the world? Say, you're talking about offering healing or something like that. I mean,
many people struggle to articulate their feelings on things, whether it's, love or pain or loss or grief. And I think throughout the ages, artists have been able to open up a space for people to feel safe in the things they feel because they've given a vocabulary to it. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't even always just mean verbally, it might be a musical vocabulary, a melody that completely embodies that feeling. Think about classical pieces you've listened to that just have the perfect communication of grief or something, or confusion, you know, or existential, you know.
So then are we just there as messengers to send messages out to other people in the world to just make them feel like they're not alone in their thoughts?
I think there's something in that, but what is really hard being an artist who's signed to a major label, and I can speak from this place obviously, is that, you know, you're then given this pedestal to be like, now you're speaking for people. And when you're aware that you have a fan base, it's that thing of, you know, I often got told to make songs, you know, universal, right? Make them more universal rather than just... But this is very difficult because, ironically, the time that you're most connected to your own story and your own personal experience is often the time that you'll communicate it best for someone else, because you're really drawing from, you know, something that you've actually have the words to express because it's yours. It's, you know, you've found a way to tap into exactly what that feeling felt like. And then it connects with someone else who has also had that experience, you know, and they find that they didn't know how to say it in that way, or they didn't know how to express it in that way. But when you start to try and write it assuming that you know how other people communicate that, and
yeah,
I'm going to write it for the world, I think that's where it can kind of stunt the process, because so much of it is about that personal conviction. When you hear another person speak from the honesty of their place, it gives you this kind of permission to own it from where you are. And permission is the word I use because it's about a sense of safety and like, yeah, I'm not alone. Someone else has the courage to speak to it from where they've been, and now I feel a little safer in allowing those feelings for myself.
Mm-hmm. I think somebody that I used to know was a great example of that with Wally writing that. Like, I don't think he would have thought about it being some huge song or be more universal, but just wrote
it's
this.
Just speaking a story.
Yeah, and it's something that I mean, look at the success of that song, and it just obviously spoke to everybody. In
a really ordinary way as well, you know, that's the thing. It's like sometimes it's not these big profound statements, it's the really small, you know, tangible things, like, yeah, it's someone picking up their records and things that everyone might know in relationships, but it's like so again, giving a
you wouldn't think of that as a universal.
No.
Like those specific details and lyrics and things.
It frames an experience and something that people can go, wow, you know, I didn't know how to say it like that, but that experience, that moment when I had to do that with my ex or something, was extremely, you know, when someone gives you that, holds your hand through it with a lyric that speaks to it, there's a release that comes from it. There's some kind of catharsis, and I think it's a great blessing that we can be a part of that for people as musicians.
Does with the record label, there is something where they're always trying to make it bigger, more palatable, or, I mean, that's the music business. That's what bigger music labels have to do. Do they put a lot of pressure, or is it?
Yeah, I think I'm getting better at navigating that now, just because I think it's so much of that is about communicating things in a way where you can kind of, I don't know, I mean, I say I'm navigating it better, but honestly it's like, it's up and down, you know, it really depends on who's in the meeting at the time and where, and, you know, but with a label, I'm trying to always remind myself that ultimately they are in the business of selling music, and people buy things that they can, you know.
People still even buy things?
That's the problem, exactly, is that this is why the record industry does need to change and does need to shift where they put value on music, you know. But they are obviously thinking in the context of efficiency, you know. When someone listens to a song, what connects with them instantly is hooks and melody and a lyric that speaks directly to people. But often, you know, some of our favorite music is the stuff that gets there through patience and through development.
Yeah, of course.
You know, depth and breadth and all of these things that are harder to communicate. But the trick, as always, which we're always fighting for, is to be able to explore both sides of that, you know. And if you can frame a song when you present it to a label by showing them the ways in which it can speak to that market, you know, and have these kind of moments of connect and universality, if you want to call it that, as well as being able to maybe speak to a place of more dimension and color. Yeah,
I think as I've gotten older with songwriting, everything's getting simpler and simpler, but it still has to have those tiny details that allude to you being sophisticated with your knowledge of music, or when we were younger, it was all mathy rock and lots of changes and all that.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you can have one math bit in your song. You're allowed one little bit. You're allowed one wonky chord change, and just tightening the screws of all these things.
For me, it's all about contrast. Like, if music has no point of conflict in it and no tension, then it's just because the whole point of speaking to human beings, and when we really feel a deep connect with something, is when we feel that someone holds the tension for us and gets that feeling. And every nuanced emotion has tension in it. It's not, you're never fully just happy, pure happiness. It's just all, there's always, I just prefer music that it shows me different sides and angles to happiness, or sexuality, different angles to sexuality, not just straight up primal lust. I like it when, these are all topics that I go through every day, but it's just, to me, it actually speaks deeper to my spirit when people can look at that from a few different ways. So it's less about like intellectual, putting a math thing in it for me, but actually injecting a tension in there that might help people to actually feel a deeper connect with it than it just being a straightforward, this is a song about,
Yeah, of course.
a breakup, or this is just a song about,
Yeah, I think there's definitely tension in your music. I think it's interesting. There's artists, I think you are one of those ones that you can't put you on in the background so much,
Definitely not the last album.
Definitely not the last album.
I think
it freaked a few people out, probably.
Yeah, and I think
that's awesome though. Why the fuck not? Do whatever the hell you want.
Right, and speak from the place you're at.
Yeah, exactly.
But as you grow older, you don't like the idea of tension, for example, right? When you get excited about that, being younger, you want to put it in everywhere because that's the thing you're excited by.
Yeah.
But as you get older, I think you can be excited by that concept, but you learn to use it less.
That's
just
what
like
I mean.
what you were saying. Yeah. So
just pull it back a little bit.
I can already feel the new album being a little bit more...
more restrained?
Yeah, totally. Just because you can sometimes say more with less.
There's just something about youth, though, that you have to just...
You have to do it.
Yeah,
you can't deny yourself of that.
Definitely
That's
not.
The excitement
Well, I
of
think
being
for
young.
you as well, you loved all the same bands that we all loved, Mars Volta and Blood Brothers and all the all that stuff.
Still do. Yeah.
So you've got to, but we all had, like, all of us boys had the luxury of playing in those bands when we were younger and kind of doing. And I don't think you got to do that. So it's like you've got to get that. You got to get that shit out of your system. You got to do it.
There's something where I feel like I'd be cheating people to ask them to be excited about something that I'm not excited about.
Exactly.
I feel like I'd be lying to them, be like, playing the songs to them, and I'm like, if I'm not, I have to think it's awesome as well, and I have to think it's exciting, a part of my even my body and my brain, and because that's again the golden echo. That's what keeps the echo resounding, is this kind of full circle of like, this is giving me a healing and a joy to make this music. And as a conversation, I think it's, and I hope it's doing that for you too, and we can work in a unison,
Is there an overarching message to your music? Is it just whatever the individual song's about, or is there an ultimate goal of what you want to put across or anything like that?
Well, I mean, every record, I guess, ends up having a theme to it, I think. But for me, I don't realize what that is until the very end of the process.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this record. And there's a lot going on in America at the moment. Although I'm, of course, not American, I can't close my eyes to it. I can't live here and be blind to it, or kind of turn my eyes and go, wow, it's not really where I'm from. It's very much... and ultimately, we are all from, we're
from the world.
We are from the world, and we're all connected. And it's funny, actually, since coming back on this trip from Ethiopia and Kenya, all the people on the trip, we've decided to all do genealogy tests and actually find out exactly where our family line traces.
Wow, okay.
Which is going to be really fascinating, and it makes you ask questions about your role in the world. And I think I'm asking a lot more questions about that stuff than I did when I was young, and it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But I just can't be sure yet, and I look at music as a kind of, I've said conversation a few times, but it's you need to let it play out before it, what it's telling you and what you're saying. So we were talking about Prince before, and he had the ability to accept all the sides of himself. And
yes.
If there was an overarching message in my music, I think I would never want to stop it from being colourful and diverse and free, because I think there's a message in that about sort of self-acceptance and radical honesty and expression and passion, you know?
Yeah. Would you ever feel like do you think you'd have the ability to feel like you've completed it? It never goes away, does it?
I don't know if that exists.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Well,
that
all
exists.
of them kept going until the day they died, didn't they?
Yeah.
Most of them. It's not many that stop, I don't think.
It's not really an endpoint to the music game, and I guess that is what is so hard and why so many people go crazy, is because maybe under this illusion that you reach a point where...
Well, I would stop if songs stopped coming to me, but I've never had a writer's block or a dry spell or anything. This thing's always been in me, so like, well, if it's there, I guess is it your duty to sort of...
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I think when you were asking why do people create music, and I was
it's
talking about...
it's there.
Yeah,
it's in you,
I think
right?
we have an inherent responsibility to answer to our creative muse, you know, and maybe it is spiritual, you know, maybe it is something speaking to us, and that we have a responsibility to speak back and to carry out that message that's been sent to us from dreams or from an experience with what one might call God. And, you know, there's a sense of duty there. And you do feel that to your... Yeah, because we are healers by nature as well. We do, and sit down with our friends and hold their hands and talk them through things. And in the same way, we know music can have that effect. We feel a sense of duty to our friends, but we feel a sense of duty to the voices in our head or the songs that come to us that they need to manifest in some way. You can't leave them hanging. They've come in.
The little children, feed the children.
You can't feed the children. It's a weird metaphor.
What do you do when you're not doing music, though? Hobbies outside of music? That's
watercolors. I've started watercolors.
Watercolors. Since when? How long have you been doing that?
Oh, not long. Just since the
Any
start
good?
of the year. Yeah. They're quite abstract.
I believe it.
Yeah, very big, you know, swathes of colour and lots of overlapping and quite landscape based.
Do you find it therapeutic to do that? Does it pull you out of the madness sometimes?
Very calming. Yeah, you should try it. It's amazing, actually. Like,
I'm still trying to figure out what my hobby is.
yeah, well, you get to play with like layering, so you can start with like a really thin veil of colour, and then you can really start building it up and kind of create. It's quite nice to see, because you have to let it dry before it can kind of take shape, and then you go again, and there's kind of patience to it. It's quite meditative.
I think I'm so picky. I wouldn't want to get paint everywhere. Isn't that so ridiculous? Like, I can't paint
It's
because
watercolours.
it's too messy. I don't know. I'll give it a shot. I feel like maybe I've tried it. I don't know. Everyone's just... I need to find a hobby, and people have been throwing all sorts of suggestions at me.
Yes, all right. I'm sure
I guess you've just got to try things, don't you?
Totally, you do.
I always thought if I wasn't a musician, I'd like to be a pool boy. What do you got?
A pool boy.
Yeah, pool boy would be my thing. I get intense joy out of walking around the pool and in a little pair of shorts with the big stick and getting the leaves out.
That's a very interesting hobby.
It's a hobby, really.
Is it? Well, you've got a sense of achievement.
You get a sense of achievement.
Sometimes there's bugs in there.
Yeah, often there's bugs, Kimbra. Sometimes there's bees, because they are attracted to the water. But it's something about seeing, what I like about it, which you don't get with music, is you see the results straight away. So you see all of the leaves gone, and there's an instant gratification for what you did. Whereas with music, it's like, it takes...
So, it's such an abstract form of gratification.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's
The song takes 3 years to even exist sometimes, or it never even exists, or you get these little bursts, and then you never know when it's going to see the light of day.
Yeah, that's...
And we're just stuck in this cycle, you know?
Trust the process.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about earlier.
I'm trying to not fight it anymore and feel like that's a big negative of it, but rather just, trust the process and do something else in the meantime while that's waiting to get done.
Yeah.
Fill your time.
Tom Larkin from Shehad once said this thing to me about how he was saying, we're mixing the new Shehad record or something, and how's that going? He's like, I've learnt to deal with he's like, there's always this deafening roar in the corner, which is music and the business of all this thing that we had to do. But he's like, but I've learned to be able to turn the volume down on it and just know that it's always there, but not to let it sort of, I don't know, mess with you too much.
Cool. Yeah,
and I think that's it. It's like we're all, you're always got to go back out on tour. You've always got another album. There's always a million songs. There's always a million emails and all these things. And that's never going to go away if we continue in this life. So you just have to make peace with it. Yeah, and just kind of know that that's it.
Sitting inside it, living with that. That's cool. I like that a lot. Rather than fighting to resist that, as if there's going to be a moment where you'll just put your feet up and you'll be respected for all your artistic integrity, but you'll have all your commercial success, and there'll be no one hassling you because everyone takes care of things. Because of course that would bring 101 problems as well. And it's just part of the tension. Art needs tension as well. We forget that.
Yeah,
we
I know.
need tension in our art to create.
I was really sad recently and I wrote lots of songs.
Yeah.
So it sucked being sad, but at least you got something out of it.
It gives us the drive to express, and we need, even I've heard 100 stories about Prince's relationship with his label, but it's so clear that it drove him to some of his best work sometimes, as the challenges he faced with people coming up against his need to express, and that if there's no conflict, if there's complete ease all the time, there's,
Well, I think that's what happens to a lot of the big stars, as they get older, they just dry up because their life seems to get too comfortable. I mean, I haven't heard George Michael do anything brilliant, still an incredible singer, but in terms of songs, they just sort of lose their ability or something, I don't know. And it's not to say, I mean, I guess he's still seems to be in turmoil a lot in his life, but there's just something about, or maybe people just only have a certain amount of great music they can write, and then after a while it just...
Well, music's also so much about time and place, and that's why being present in it is, there's so many variables that come into, this, you were talking about like somebody has to know. Think of all the variables that, had to be in place for that to take off the way it did. It's not like it just at any point that would have done. I do
Perfect
believe
storm.
there's things that come, exactly, and, timing of stuff and collective consciousness as well, where the world is at that time spiritually and just culturally and economically. All of these things can play into how a song connects. And so, again, like being present while you're in it rather than always looking to...
you can't orchestrate those things into existence as well. You've just got to facilitate whatever's in you or your musical desire at the time. I don't think you can plan... what's currently cool now? Okay, what should I write about or anything like that? It's never...
I'm really inspired by, and I've been, working a bit with him, David Byrne, since living here in New York. We performed together at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he's coming in to work with us at the studio with this improvisation collective that I've started. And really inspired by the way he's just continued to have this kind of evolving career where
he's been amazing.
He's so aware of his skill as an artist, but he's just like a child who's still so curious every day to learn new things and to never be, defined by the one thing that he does. He's, working on an exhibition at the moment with V3 goggles, which is people put on these goggles and they see their own body in the size and form of a Barbie doll. So they look down and all their scale has changed, and they look at a chair and they think, I can sit in that, and then they're told that chair is actually only, the size of your thumb. And, so he's very interested in, and to him, this is the same expression that he's exploring in music, just in a different medium. And, we all have the capacity as musicians to shift our thinking into a different medium and employ the same creativity, because it's just it's a muscle that we've learned to use it in this one way, but we can use it in so many ways.
I think it's easy to feel a little constricted sometimes, maybe as well. I mean, I would like to branch out into other things. I think I feel like maybe I've got to achieve the music thing a little more first before you can start to do these other things. But I don't think that's necessarily the case either. But then I also think you don't want to be too fragmented, and where you're a songwriter, you're also the musician, you're a singer, but you're also a photographer, then you're also
That's true, There needs to be focus.
There needs to be a little bit of focus.
I agree with that.
But for someone like him who, Talking Heads had their career and did all those things, and then he's always been an artist anyway, but as he's gotten older, it seems like he's invested more time into other sort of avenues. It feels like it's still
part of the same thing. It doesn't feel like that's what's so cool about it, is it's still his voice and his creative spirit, manifesting in these different ways, but you still get the sense that it's it's part of the same conversation he's having with the world in a way. And to me, that's inspiring to see someone grow older in their career as a musician and still have these different outlets where they feel like they're completely as excited as they were from day one, rather than just doing a tired routine of, you know, do it, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I guess you've been very lucky to have met a lot of these people that get to work with these people who have done and been around a lot longer, and I guess you can pick their brains, and it would be inspiring.
Try and find out how not to go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've had a little bit of a different path, us rock and roll pigs, because we sort of haven't got to meet too many of those people, so a lot of us have just been fucking making it up as we go along a little bit.
Yeah, totally, and we all are, I guess.
Yeah, but that's why I've started this podcast, is just I want to pick more people's brains and
that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, try and get an understanding more for myself than for anyone else, and also for other people to listen to, just to see how we all deal with this life, because it's very easy from the outside of people just to look at fame and notoriety or whatever it is, that then not see what we are actually doing and what and for me, one of the biggest struggles with this is downtime, you know, on tour, and just having weeks and weeks on end and months where you can't really commit to doing anything, because you're always in between the cycle of having to go on tour again, or you know, in Melbourne, when I'm back in Melbourne, I'm there for a few months, but then I know I'm away for a few months after that, so I can't start anything sometimes, you know.
Can feel very disengaged from community.
Yeah, exactly.
Community is so vital to feeling balanced, right? And
but
that's
while you've been in New York, have you been here mainly here most of the time? Like, you've been able to engage in the community?
For the first time in a really long time, I actually
That's
have.
awesome.
Yeah, because LA, I always felt a little bit disconnected because of the lack of a car, you know, and the lack of like ease to just get places. And I was quite a hermit when I lived on a farm there, you know, and so I had this strange life where I would lock myself away a bit, but here I've made that real effort to get to know the musical community, and also other communities, you know, like all kinds of people from different walks of life. And what I love about New York is you're kind of slammed in with all of them at once.
You sure
and you can't
are.
avoid it, you know. It's like you don't pick your bubbles or your circles, you're just in all of it, and I love
you're
that. And
pretty high energy and high thought. I feel like the city seems right for you.
It's funny, I used to study to metal music when I did math homework at school. I think I might have told you this.
Of course.
And I could focus. You know, if Mum tried to tell me to put, you know, on
Botch,
some,
was
like,
it?
botch, yeah. But if people suggested slower music because it would calm the brain, and my brain would go crazy, you know. So I needed that sense of stimulus to actually get
So this is the perfect city for you.
Isn't that funny?
I didn't think about that. But I mean, I kind of had thought about it. But when you do the metal analogy.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I like Times Square. I mean, that is...
But Times Square is just the ballsack of the world, you know?
It is, yeah.
It's just...
That's not the same. But yeah, so what's been a real game changer for the community thing for me has been starting up these improvisation nights. And maybe it's an interesting angle for your podcast, but you know, going from touring as just like me and my band and always being, you know, that entity that we were, to suddenly like deciding to go down to the Bootleg Theatre in LA, put it on Twitter like 3 hours.
How
before the show.
often are you doing them?
In LA, I did it 4 times all up. I did it every Sunday for a month.
But
Here I did it for 4 months, 1 Sunday of each month.
Okay.
It's a slightly different structure, but you know, the rooms would be packed every night. You know, I made it free, so they would always be crammed with people. And I invited down different guests, you know. Thundercat did most of the nights in LA. Miguel came down one night and did it. You know, guys from the Blood Brothers actually came and jammed with us, who were, you know, next to like, you know, guys from Herbie Hancock's band, which is just the strangest idea, but so liberating. And I really stepped face first, is that the saying? Head first.
We know what you mean.
Head first into that fear zone, because it's kind of scary to be in front of a bunch of people and just go, write a song, go. But to me, it
write
just...
a song, go.
Well, you know, it
just
was,
jam, basically. Throw some shit in the ring.
But I did tell the audience that we were putting that idea of structure into the space. So we were trying to arrange songs and write choruses.
Do you chat beforehand about what you're going to try to do, or you just set everyone free?
Set everyone free, but with the parameters that we're trying to approach form. So there'll be a 4-bar intro, and then we're going to try for some kind of verse, and we're going to try for some kind of chorus. And, you know, as I've been Yeah, well, obviously the bass player would determine that, but if the bass player changed, then everyone had to be listening to go for that change. And you wouldn't believe some of the things that come out of this stuff because the stakes are so high, you know, no one can kind of be like, yo, let's go again, you know, it's like, people are standing there looking and they're moving with you and you are, you know, shaping the whole energy of the room. And so the reason I just bring this up with community is it's like, it's just kind of binded me with all these people when I've started these things, because all of a sudden you're in this space together where you all have to be a team and kind of, and it doesn't matter who is, you know.
Sounds terrifyingly
it's
exciting.
Terrifyingly exciting. And I don't know, now that I want to tell more musicians about it as like a way
I'd love
of,
to get involved next time I'm around. I'd love to come down and have a shred.
Getting out of that zone of being like defined by the, you know, all the songs that you've written before and then the name that you have or the brand that you're a part of. And just being, you know, also someone with hands that can play an instrument.
And you can fuck up and you can look stupid, and
absolutely.
that's really healthy.
Absolutely. It's all about that, and people are in that space knowing that that's kind of a part of it.
And I guess everyone's ego gets slightly deflated by the other people that are there as well. Hey, I like it. So what's this Red Bull thing? What's going on at the moment? Is it derived from those improv nights?
It's the next step in this whole world of improvisation. So this particular collective is called Exotech, and it's more of a like less of a kind of pop structure and more long form arrangements. So the pieces we come up with are more like soundtracks, you know, it's all very abstract, noise based, and then kind of a groove will emerge out of it. And we all play in the round, so the audience stands around us. It's like 14 up to 16 musicians playing all at the same time, so it's hectic, you know. But we have to really play with space, you know, and patience. And Red Bull offered us a 2-week in-artist residency to develop some of the recordings from the live sessions in the studio.
Yeah.
And we're bringing in all people from David Byrne to Questlove to, you know, Ian from Battles, all these great people we've become friends with to help develop these ideas. But you know what we're finding is when we get in this space, we just want to write new music, you know, and improvise again. So the residency is turning into just more improvisations with people in the room and seeing what the environment of a studio does to change that. And it's strange, it's so different to the work I usually do, which is sitting and writing, you know, pop songs with a narrative to the lyric and a structure and a hook.
But you also get so many cool, you'll write songs that you wouldn't write, even if there's just that 10-second groove that you got from the improv, then you take that. I mean, that's what Josh Homme was always doing with those desert sessions, is you just get that bunch of people together. And I've even noticed it just with jams that I've had, like you'll jam for 4 hours, there's one tiny bit that's awesome, and then you just take that bit out and then develop that into a song.
Absolutely.
But shit that just would not exist without that.
No way.
That way of doing it.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So who knows what we'll get out of it? Like, it's very different to every other project where it's like those other projects are a means to an end. You have a budget to make this thing. Yeah. This is actually, you know, it's free of all of those things. This is,
I love art for art's sake, though.
Yeah.
It's like, it needs to exist. It needs to be out there.
Very
and then
freeing.
people sort of, there's the highest form of just ridiculous art for art's sake, avant-garde, and then Radiohead listens to that, and then they make it palatable, and it becomes Radiohead, and then Coldplay listen to Radiohead, and then they make that, and then someone listens to Coldplay, and like down the triangle it goes.
That's it.
But there needs to be something at the top that's the weirdest shit that can be watered down.
That trickles down to everyone else.
Yeah, that's the concentrate at the top. And that's you.
Yeah, it's one way of looking at it. I like it.
Hey, that'll probably do it, eh?
Yeah, just should probably check the time.
We're good. Thank you very much.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right.
Kimbra, folks, hasn't she got a whole lot of ideas and a passion and a zest for experiencing life? I really, really admire her. Music, she's always on a journey. She's always going for something. Nothing's got in her way. I think that's something that a lot of artists and people could take from. They could learn a lot from her. If you haven't heard her records, Vows, and the most recent one, The Golden Echo, check them out. She's had amazing guests perform on those records. She's collaborated with some incredible artists. She also just put out a new single, Sweet Relief, with a video. I just watched that before. I was feeling it. Prog. What do we always used to call it when we talk about this stuff, her and I? I guess we'd say it's future funk prog pop. You'll know what I mean. Check out Sweet Relief. Cool. Thanks for tuning into the bottom of it. That's another episode for today. Gonna be plenty more coming. Stay tuned. Cheers.